Most people don't notice when money leaves their life because it rarely disappears in a single visible moment. There's no dramatic loss, no clear event, no instant consequence that forces attention. Instead, it fades quietly in small decisions that feel reasonable at the time, in habits that seem harmless, and in patterns that repeat so consistently they become invisible. Imagine someone checking their account at the end of the month and feeling a vague confusion, not panic, just a subtle question of where everything went, because nothing they did felt excessive, nothing felt irresponsible, and yet the result keeps repeating. This is what can be described as the slow leak, a financial pattern where small, continuous outflows gradually override income, not through large mistakes, but through unnoticed repetition. The difficulty is not mathematical complexity, but psychological invisibility. Humans are not naturally wired to track small, frequent losses over long periods of time, especially when each individual decision carries almost no emotional weight. A small purchase today feels disconnected from a similar purchase tomorrow, and both feel completely separate from the cumulative effect that forms over months or years. The brain tends to evaluate decisions in isolation rather than as part of a system, which creates a gap between perception and reality. When someone spends a small amount, the internal justification is often immediate and localized, focused on the present moment, the convenience, or the minor reward. What is missing is a built-in mechanism to aggregate these small moments into a long-term structure. As a result, behavior feels controlled, while outcomes drift in a different direction. If we translate this into simple math, the pattern becomes clearer. Consider a daily expense that feels insignificant, something small enough to avoid attention. Over a single day, it barely registers. Over a week, it still feels manageable. But over a year, that same amount repeats hundreds of times. The number itself is not shocking because of its size, but because of its consistency. When repetition meets time, even modest values begin to scale in ways that are difficult to intuit. What makes the slow leak particularly persistent is that it often hides inside normalized behavior. These are not extreme choices or obvious financial errors. They are routine actions, socially reinforced and widely accepted, which removes any signal that something needs to change. When everyone around you operates within similar patterns, there is no contrast to highlight the drift, and without contrast, awareness rarely forms. There is also a structural element at play, where modern systems are designed to reduce friction around spending while increasing friction around saving or investing. Transactions are faster, more seamless, and less tangible than they were in the past, which further separates action from consequence. When money moves without physical interaction, the feedback loop weakens, and without a strong feedback loop, small leaks remain undetected for longer periods. Over time, this creates a quiet divergence between income and retained value. Someone may increase their earnings, adjust their lifestyle slightly, and still experience the same underlying pattern because the leak scales along with them. This is why higher income does not automatically translate into financial stability or growth. Without awareness of the system, the structure simply expands. The critical shift is not about eliminating all small expenses, but about recognizing patterns that repeat without intention. It requires stepping outside individual decisions and observing behavior at a higher level, where frequency and consistency become visible. When someone begins to track patterns instead of moments, the invisible starts to take shape, and what once felt random begins to reveal structure. This shift is less about restriction and more about clarity. It is the difference between reacting to isolated choices and understanding the system those choices create. Once the system is visible, adjustments become more precise, not driven by guilt or urgency, but by awareness of how small actions accumulate over time. The slow leak does not demand attention, which is exactly why it persists. It operates quietly, consistently, and without friction, shaping outcomes in the background. And in many cases, the difference between financial stagnation and gradual progress is not defined by major decisions, but whether this quiet pattern is seen, understood, and gently redirected over time.